In today's video, I wanted to go through the entire Dark Brotherhood questline from start to finish, featured in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. Now, I've already put out a video that covers the events of the storyline in depth from the original game. The difference with this one though is that it'll be a shorter, detailed summary, and it's in the remake. I won't be including much of the NPC's dialogue, as instead, I'll attempt to recount the finer details whilst omitting some of the fluff. I'll try to capture the story's essence, the characters' personalities, the magic of the contracts, and some of my own personal experiences, all while keeping the video digestible and concise. The facts and information provided today are brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. The Dark Brotherhood is one of the 5 main joinable factions in vanilla Oblivion. It's up there as my favorite guild and offers a wonderful story filled with tragedy and death. Unlike 3 of the other factions, enlisting isn't as obvious as asking to join. In fact, if you didn't know how to contact the guild, local rumors say that the Brotherhood visits you in your sleep after you've murdered someone. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as wiping out a bandit camp. The victim has to be someone who's an innocent civilian. So think a citizen in a major city, a farmer at a settlement, a guest at an inn, etc. If your character is on the morally good side though, or you're afraid of the bounty, the UESP details several NPCs who make for easy targets. Regardless, once you've taken an innocent life, you should receive a message in the top left corner of your screen that says, "Your killing has been observed by forces unknown." First-time players of the remake might have shrugged this off or totally forgot about it, as in the moment, nothing really happens. However, after resting in a bed, the plot thickens when another message appears and says, "The air grows chill and a shadow approaches."
You sleep rather soundly for a murderer. That's good. You'll need a clear conscience for what I'm about to propose.
This shrouded, mysterious man who's standing before you is Lucian the Chance. He's a high-ranking member of the Dark Brotherhood, a speaker, and he's here to recruit you into the faction. However, first you need to prove yourself in the eyes of the guild. You have to show that you're willing to follow orders, kill on command, and jump through hoops in order to reach your target. LeChance also gives you an unused dagger called the Blade of Woe. Right now, it may not seem that good, but trust me, you're going to want to hold on to this thing. The trial kill has the player heading over to the Inn of Ill Omen. It's located in between the Imperial City and Breville, over on the Green Road. Here, you're to find someone named Rufio and assassinate him. If you weren't sure where to look, the proprietor, Mannheim Mallhand, says that he's staying in the quarters below. Down here, Rufio can be found sleeping in a bed, which makes for an incredibly easy takedown.
She struggled. I told her to just stay still, but she wouldn't listen.
He only has 1 health point, so any attack does the trick. Once Rufio has been slain, you can sleep in any bed, and that same night, LeChance will revisit you. The speaker welcomes you to the guild and directs you over to the faction's headquarters in Shadenhall. This sanctuary can be found in the abandoned house, and in the basement lies the Black Door. Interacting with it, an ethereal voice asks you a question, and you respond with the password. Waiting for you on the other side is Ochiva, the mistress of the sanctuary. She gives you a formal welcome into their little family. The sanctuary is your new home. The other members are like your brothers and sisters. Someone named Vicente Valtieri will be giving you contracts, and she even hands you some new gear. The Shrouded Armor and the Shrouded Hood. A light armor, body and headpiece that when combined offer a 10-point fortification to skills like Sneak, Illusion, Marksman, Blade, and Acrobatics. The Sanctuary has 3 different zones to it. The first is the common area that you initially entered. It also holds the personal quarters of both Ochiva and this Vicente Valtieri. Next are the living quarters. This is where you can find your guildmates sleeping and eating, and it's also a place for you to do the same. Finally, you have the training quarters. Not much is offered to the player here, but it's also where you might find some of the NPCs throughout the day. In total, there are 7 guildmates who reside here. Almost all of them are friendly. However, to put it blatantly, there are only a handful who will actually be useful to you. Vicente, Tenava, and Ochiva offer quests, while Mirage Dar is a merchant. The other 3 will only offer you advice on contracts, which is still helpful in its own way.
Warmest greetings to you. I trust you've already spoken with Ochiva?
Meeting with Vicente for the first time, you'll notice his appearance is quite strange. He's actually a vampire, but doesn't let his unholy urges get in the way of the guild and its priorities. His undead status becomes relevant later in the story though. Valtieri explains how the contracts work. If you assassinate the target, you receive your payout, which is often gold. Sometimes there will be special instructions on how to complete the kill, and if you successfully follow them, you'll receive a bonus reward. The first contract is a pretty easy one. The player is sent to the Imperial City waterfront. Your target is the pirate captain, Gaston Tussaud, and he's tucked away on the Marie Elena. You can either board the ship by walking atop the deck, or by stuffing yourself in a crate. Whichever way you choose, it's likely you'll have to do some fighting, unless you're able to sneak past the guards.
You ain't one of me crew. What business you be having here, mate?
While it is possible to silently take down Tussaud, there's a chance that a brawl breaks out between the two of you. If you covered your tracks though, no one else should be barging in mid-fight. However, after the fact is a whole different story.
Captain Tussaud, are you alright, sir?
You can either choose to silently slip out the back of the captain's quarters, or stay for more bloodshed. Either way, once it's wrapped up, you can return to Valtieri. He congratulates you on your first successful contract, and as a reward, gives you the Black Band. It's an enchanted ring that fortifies light armor and security for 8 points, as well as offers magica resistance for 8%. Eager for more work, you can return to Vicente and ask for the next contract. This is the first one that includes a bonus item. The objective is to go to Bruma and sneak into the home belonging to someone named Bainlin. This old wood elf is the target. Now, if you want the bonus, you're to make his death look like an accident. Late into the night, he sits in his chair, which is placed right under a mounted minotaur head. You're to loosen the fastenings and escape without being noticed by his manservant, Grom. Now, really quickly, I wanted to explain the hierarchy of the Dark Brotherhood, as you've likely heard the terms Void, Sithis, Night Mother, Tenets, etc. Sithis is pretty much an ominous god of death, and little is known about this entity. He resides in the Void, where the souls of the slain targets are sent to. Underneath him is the Night Mother. She was once a living person, but after sacrificing her 5 children to Sithis, she's now a supernatural entity who's revered by the guild. The number 5 is a pretty significant number to the faction, as you'll soon be seeing a lot more of it. There are 5 tenets that hold the guild together. These are essentially rules that every guild member has to follow, and they're as simple as don't kill one another, don't steal from each other, don't disrespect the Night Mother, etc. Finally, there are different ranks and rules in the faction that serve under the Night Mother and Sithis. You'll get introduced to the higher-ups eventually, but for now, everyone who's within the first 5 ranks, Murderer to Executioner, for the most part stays at the Sanctuary and gets sent out to complete these simpler contracts. Back to the quest, Bainlin's home has 2 entrances. The front is the most direct. However, you run the risk of getting caught while breaking in, and there's no telling where Grom or Bainlin will be once you're inside. The other route is through the back and into the basement. This brings you to a slightly more advantageous position. Whichever route you choose, you'll have to work your way upstairs and into the crawl space. Between 8 and 11 PM, Bainlin will be sitting in his chair, and you can unfasten the mounted head right above him. Now comes the tricky part, leaving the house undetected. The ruckus will have brought Grom over to Bainlin's body, and the Nord is now on high alert. If your sneak skill isn't very good, I recommend a direct approach of jumping down right behind him and sneaking out the front. In Oblivion logic, he won't hear someone dropping down behind him, but he will see a dark figure out of the corner of his eye. Once you've left the house unnoticed, you can return to Vicente for your reward, bonus, and advancement to the rank of Slayer. The gold payout is dependent on your overall level, with 600 being the max. The same goes for the bonuses and their effects. For this one, Valtieri gives you Sufferthorn, an enchanted leveled elven dagger. In its best possible form, level 30 plus, it has the enchantments of Drain Health for 35 points and Drain Strength for 20 points. Ready for contract number 3, Vicente gives you quite the fun one. Your target is Valen Dreth, the old Dunmer whom you first interacted with at the beginning of the game. He's still in the Imperial City prison, and the only way of getting to him is through retracing your steps. However, since the Emperor's assassination, the Imperial subterrane is now crawling with guards. In order to get your bonus on this one, you have to refrain from killing any of them. Luckily, you really only need to avoid 2 of the paths if you follow the main halls and don't stray off the path. Something that's worth mentioning is that if you ever have difficulty with these contracts, asking your guildmates for advice can go a long way. They'll often give you hints and clues for how to best carry out the assassination. Eventually, through some sneaking and dungeon crawling, you'll end up in your original jail cell. A guard is speaking with Dreth, and after some time, he'll exit the jailing area, leaving the 2 of you alone. On a table at the opposite end, you'll find 2 keys. One for Dreth's cell, and the other is for the Bastion. Valen remembers the player and attempts to act friendly in order to be released. Opening the gates, Dreth goes down pretty easily and no one's around to witness the murder. Escaping through the Bastion, the guards are none the wiser and Valtieri can be returned to. He gives you the gold standard as well as the scales of pitiless justice. While on your person, they buff strength and intelligence by 2 points, yet lower personality by 2 points. Without jumping ahead, this next contract is the 4th and final one handed out by Valtieri. It's quite the unusual task. Someone by the name of Francois Motier has hired the Brotherhood to help fake his death. Valtieri gives you a blade that's been dipped in a special paralyzing elixir, and he's also given you the antidote to resurrect the man after the fact. Traveling over to Coral and entering Francois' home, you can speak with him and he goes further into detail. When the Enforcer shows up, slash Motier with the blade, flee the city, wait a full day, revive Francois in the Undercroft, and then take him to the Grey Mare. This is one of the few quests in the faction that you can actually fail. If you kill Motier or hides his heart, the whole plan is ruined. The stakes are low, but the reward is always nice. Once you've administered the antidote, the Breton reveals that the crypt has a unique enchantment. If something or someone gets removed from their resting spot, the dead rise and attack the intruders. Hacking and slashing your way through the zombies, once Francois has been escorted to the inn, your job here is done.
Ah, the Grey Mare. From here I will be able to arrange for transportation out of Cyrodiil. You have served me well, assassin.
Returning to the sanctuary, Vicente rewards you with an enchanted amulet, a key to the outside well, allowing for easier passage in and out of the base, and an advancement to the rank of Eliminator. The piece of jewelry is called Cruelty's Heart. At its best, it fortifies willpower and strength for 18 points each. Speaking with him once more, Valtieri tells you that from here on out, you're to report to Ochiva for contracts. However, before you leave, he offers to turn you into a vampire. Vampirism has its pros and cons, and some of its perks could go a long way for certain Dark Brotherhood contracts. Realistically though, this offer isn't any different from contracting the disease out in the wild, and it's all about your preference. Chatting with Ochiva, the next assignment involves assassinating a high elf named Phalion. Other than the fact that he lives somewhere in the Imperial City, not much is known about him. You're going to have to do some detective work. Also, Ochiva says to steer clear of the Imperial Watch Captain, Adamus Philida. He's always looking into the Brotherhood and has thwarted many contracts. In order to receive the bonus, Phalion has to die in a secluded location with no witnesses. The first step to finding Phalion is by asking around the Elven community. They'll direct you over to the Tiber Septim Hotel in the Talos Plaza district. Heading on over and cozying up to Augusta Calidia, she reveals that Phalion has become a skooma addict and only returns to the hotel at night. Only then does he spend time with Atrena, his companion. Heading on upstairs and speaking with her, she reveals that her other half spends his waking hours at Lorkmir's house in the Elven Gardens district. The catch though is that the house is abandoned, therefore making it a great spot to execute the High Elf.
Hey, what are you doing here? You're not my friend?
Phalion only has 10 health points, and a heavy attack or 2 should do the job. His body's left to rot in the home, and Adamus Philida is none the wiser. Returning to Ochiva in the sanctuary, she pays you out a leveled amount of gold and gives you the bow, Shadowhunt, as your bonus. At its best, Shadowhunt damages health and magicka for 20 points each, turns undead up to level 32, and inflicts a weakness to poison for 20%. This next contract requires a little more skill from the player. The Mark is a warlord named Roderick. The Red Guard resides in Fort Such, which is north of Anvil. However, Roderick is actually on his deathbed, kept alive only by some powerful medicine. He's surrounded by his trusted mercenaries, and if you want the bonus, you have to sneak into the fort undetected, Refrain from killing anyone, swap his medicine out with a poison, and leave undetected. If Roderick was killed by any other means, or even if you silently take down a mercenary, the bonus is forfeit. Asking around for advice from your guildmates, they'll reveal that there's a separate secret entrance into such. Wherein the skillful part lies is navigating through the dungeon and making it to Roderick. Several of the mercenaries are patrolling the tight tunnels and chambers. It's one thing to sneak past them, but you'll also need to pickpocket at least one in order to obtain the gate key. Once that's taken care of, the medicine cabinet can be found by Roderick's resting place, and a quick swap of the elixirs does the trick. Sneaking out the way you came in is most ideal, and once you're in the clear, you can return to Ochiva at the Sanctuary. Your reward is a leveled amount of gold, and an enchanted piece of clothing called the Deceiver's Finery. At its best, it fortifies speechcraft and personality for 18 points each. These are buffs that may come in handy for this next contract. Chatting again with the Argonian, her third contract is one of my personal favorites. This assignment has the player taking out 5 targets at once, which at first sounds like a pretty tall task. However, as part of the job, you'll be posing as the 6th guest in what appears to be an extravagant scavenger hunt. At Summit Miss Manor in the city of Skingrad, you'll meet with a doorman named Fafnir. He's a fellow guildmate and gives you the key to the house. The rules are simple. No one leaves until the chest of gold has been found. Your rules are different though. You can't leave until everyone else is dead. In order to get the bonus for this contract, no one can see you kill anybody, nor can they suspect you as the murderer. Inside the manor, you'll run into Dovesi Dren, Mathilde Petit, Nels the Naughty, Neville, and Primo Antonius. Talking with each of them, you'll learn about the gossip and drama that's already taken place. You can use this information to isolate each target and to even turn them against one another. However, if you wanted to do things quickly, this quest is really as simple as stealth killing each guest. Crouching in a corner and firing off an arrow does the trick. Even if the body is in plain sight, or if the other guests witness that NPC die, all that matters is that they didn't see you do it. The bonus still stands. Be careful with who's left alive at the end though, as if you choose to speak with them, they might either recognize you as the assassin or attempt to break out of the manor. Once all 5 NPCs have been eliminated, you can leave the house and return to Ochiva at the Sanctuary. As a reward, you get your gold as well as a permanent effect called the Night Mother's Blessing. It gives a 2-point buff to Acrobatics, Blade, Marksman, Security, and Sneak. Speaking with Ochiva, she gives you her last contract. This one is of great importance, and it's pretty monumental for the faction. Adamas Philida, the watch captain who's been interfering with the Brotherhood's affairs for years, is finally retiring. However, this ending isn't good enough for the guild. The higher-ups of the faction have ordered Philida's assassination. He spends his remaining days at the city of Leywin. If you want a bonus, the player is to kill him and take his finger along with his ring. From there, you need to place them in the watch captain's desk back at the Imperial City. This is to be seen as a warning to the new captain taking his place. To make this contract a lot easier, you're given something called the Rose of Sithis. It's an arrow that will instantly kill Adamas, so long as he's unarmored. Between 3 and 8 PM, Philida goes for a swim in one of the local ponds. He'll have a bodyguard watching over him, but he'll have taken off all of his gear. Finding a secure spot, away from prying eyes, you can let the arrow fly. The hard part is pretty much over. On his body will be several keys. I suggest you take them all, as well as his finger. The bodyguard will either lose interest or aggro onto you. If he attacks you, it doesn't mean you have a bounty. You can just leave the area, and he'll eventually go away. Now, for the bonus, head over to the capital and approach the Legion offices. One of those keys you picked up from Philida's body should get you in no problem, but you will have to pick the lock on the desk. Place his finger inside, and that's about it. Returning to Ochiva, she rewards you with leveled gold, a promotion to the rank of Assassin, as well as a bonus of 500 septums. Now, this next quest isn't technically part of the questline. However, it's pretty simple and you get a decent reward for completing it. At any point in between the Lonely Wanderer and where the story just paused, the player can speak with Tainava. He'll ask you for a favor and tell you a brief story regarding him, Ochiva, and someone named Scartail. The 3 of them were trained as Shadowscales in Blackmarsh. However, Scartail, an NPC who was previously not in the story, defected from his post. Tainava would like you to seek out the traitor at Bogwater Camp and execute him. He's unable to do it himself because Shadowscales are forbidden from killing other Shadowscales. Bogwater is located to the far south of Cyrodiil, just north of Deepscorn Hollow. Arriving, you'll encounter Scartail, and speaking with him, he says that he's been wounded by another assassin who just made an attempt on his life. In order to stay alive, he offers you a deal. In exchange for his freedom, he'll tell you where he hid some treasure. As for proof of the kill, Scartail suggests you take the heart of the dead Argonian assassin and pass it off as his. No matter your choice, it doesn't affect the outcome of this quest. You can obey Tainava or cut a deal with Scartail. You can even backstab the Shadowscale by taking the treasure and attacking him anyways. Regardless, once you have an Argonian heart in your inventory, Tainava will express his gratitude by gifting you the boots of Bloody Bounding. At their best, they offer fortifications to acrobatics and blade for 18 points. Resuming the story, this officially marks the turning point in the questline. Chatting with Ochiva, she hands you a letter directly from Lucien Lachance. Opening it up, Lucien starts out by commenting on how fast you've been able to progress through the faction. He then says that the Black Hand themselves have need of your abilities. You're to travel to Fort Farragut, just north of the city, as soon as possible. The fort is guarded by undead guardians, and they'll act as a small test of your capability in combat. Normally, you'd enter the dungeon through the front door, and you'd have to face down whatever forces stand in your way. If, however, you knew better, you'd go through the secret entrance, which leads you directly to Lachance's hideout.
That is why I have sent for you. I'm afraid there is a situation.
The reason Lucien called you here is pretty serious. Apparently, there's a traitor running rampant in the guild, and there seems to be some connection between them and the Sanctuary. Since you joined after the treachery had started, you're absolved of any suspicion. Lucien orders you to carry out a purification. All 7 guildmates at the headquarters need to be eliminated, as they either have some sort of connection to the traitor, or the traitor is among them. This is the only time where it's okay to break the 5 tenets, as no punishment will be given out to the player. In order to help out with the kills, Lucien gives you 1 poisoned apple, as well as a scroll to summon the ghost of Old Rufio. There's no right or wrong way to go about the purification. You can charge in, sword ablaze, and take on everyone at once. You can wait for each target to isolate themselves and take them down in seclusion. You can place multiple poisoned apples around the sanctuary and wait for your guildmates to fall ill. The only thing I do recommend is to make sure you get all you can from your guildmates. If you want Vicente to turn you into a vampire, do it now. If you don't have Tainava's quest yet, now's the time. This is the final chance to purchase spells and items from Mirage Dar. He carries some useful enchanted gear like the Bow of Infernal Frost and Perdition's Wrath. These are items you can't get a hold of after Dar is dead. Depending on how secretive you are with the kills, you won't have to fight off the Dark Guardian or Schemer the Rat. The UESP calls out Vicente as being one of the harder guildmates to kill, and I agree. He's placed 5 levels above the player, has all the abilities that a vampire possesses, and fights with a leveled longsword. If the fight is too challenging, reverse pickpocketing him with garlic inflicts him with a massive weakness. His strength and endurance drops by 100 points each, and he has a 100% weakness to both normal weapons and magic. Once the purification is complete, you can return to Lachance at the fort and report your success. As a reward for your loyalty, he promotes you to the rank of Silencer. From this point forward, you'll only receive contracts from him. The Sanctuary becomes irrelevant, and you'll get your orders from dead drops that are placed around Cyrodiil. He also gives you the demonic horse, Shadowmere. Shadowmere is arguably the best horse in the game. She's up there among the fastest, deals pretty good damage, and best of all, she's marked as essential. Therefore, she can never die. Now, I wanted to take the time to quickly explain the Black Hand. They're the inner circle of the Dark Brotherhood and among the highest ranks a guildmate can achieve. They're represented by a hand, 4 fingers and a thumb. The thumb is the listener. That's the most coveted and revered position in the entire guild. They receive orders directly from the Night Mother. The listener then relays the contract to the 4 fingers, aka the speakers. The speakers oversee a specific sanctuary, and they delegate the contracts to the executioners of said sanctuaries. The executioners then give out the contracts to the other guildmates based off of their abilities. If the speaker receives a rather important contract, they can then give it to their silencer. This role is best described as a nail or claw belonging to each finger. From here on out, the essence of the Dark Brotherhood completely changes. You go from having a home and the support of your guildmates to becoming a lone wanderer. The first dead drop is located at Hero Hill, which is southeast of Fort Farragut. Your first target as a silencer is a necromancer named Keladane. He's currently in the process of becoming a lich. He currently resides at Leafrot Cave, and Lucian mentions that he might be too powerful to take on directly. The cave is located far to the east of Breville, by the Panther River. Going on inside, you'll discover that the dungeon is overrun with undead. On a table by the entrance is a book called The Path of Transcendence. It details Keladane's experiments and overall journey to lichdom. In it, he reveals that he removed his soul and stored it in an hourglass called the Sands of Resolve. He keeps it on him at all times, as if it were removed from his body during this stage of the transformation, he'd be killed. Pickpocketing the hourglass from the necromancer is a valid way to complete this contract. However, from this point forward, bonuses no longer exist, and getting the job done is all that matters. If your character doesn't excel at pickpocketing, successfully taking the Sands of Resolve might be trickier than outright fighting Keladane. The Altmer is placed at level 20, has 116 health points, and casts less than mediocre spells. No matter how it gets done, once the necromancer is defeated, you can take your leave and head to the next dead drop. The next set of orders is in the city of Coral. In an old sack in front of the Great Oak Tree, you'll find your new assignment as well as the new gold standard, which is 500 septums. To me, this next contract has always been one of the most difficult ones. You're tasked with killing off every member of the Draconis family. There are 5 of them in total, and they're scattered all throughout Cyrodiil. The orders only go as far as telling you that Perennia, the matron of the family, can be located at Apple Watch, just west of Bruma. Her and her guard dog Jake are easy targets to eliminate. In her inventory is the Draconis gift list. This tells you where to find the rest of her family. Starting with the easier kills, Andreas is the proprietor of the Drunken Dragon Inn, which is located southeast of Breville. By taunting him with his mother's death, he'll begin to attack you. Since he struck you first, you're clear to engage without penalty. This will also draw the attention of a nearby legionnaire who will come to your aid and kill Andreas for you. The next sibling is Sibylla Draconis. She can be found in Muck Valley Cavern, which is southwest of Shadenhall. This dungeon consists of one zone, and there are around 6 to 8 animals in here with Sibylla. The Draconis can be found at the end of the line, and taking her out via combat isn't very difficult. However, the final 2 siblings are much trickier marks. Matthias Draconis works as a bodyguard at Umbacano Manor in the Imperial City. The easiest time to single him out is likely while he's on duty patrolling the basement. He'll aggro onto you, and anything after is considered self-defense. Otherwise, you can follow him around town and try to find a prime opening. In my case, even after taking my time with the kill and drawing out the fight, the penalty was only 40 gold, which is nothing more than an assault charge. The final Draconis sibling is Kalia, and she happens to be the captain of the Leywin Guard. She's arguably the toughest mark, as she can fight well, can easily alert the other guards to any misconduct, and doesn't sleep. According to the UESP, the easiest option for taking her out is by taunting her, then bringing her into a faction hall. Everyone else does the dirty work for you, and you receive little to no bounty. Another good way is by locating her during her break at the Three Sisters Inn. She'll be sitting down, zoned out in her chair, and it's the perfect time to ruthlessly strike. If done quick enough, no bounty will be incurred here either. Once all 5 members of the Draconis family have been slain, you can head to the next dead drop location. Castle Skingrad's courtyard holds a stone well with your new set of orders, as well as 500 gold. Your next target is a Khajiit named Jagasta, located up in Bruma. He turned down a wedding dowry from a Cyrodiilic noble and embarrassed the family. In turn, that family performed the Black Sacrament, and now it's your job to follow through with the assassination. LeChance warns you though that Jagasta is a master at hand-to-hand combat, and knows you're coming. He also tipped off the guards to incoming trouble, so don't rely on any help if the fight spills over into the streets. Breaking into the Khajiit's home, there's no sign of him anywhere. However, looking around for a bit, you'll notice a hidden trap door that leads down to a secret training room. Here, you'll find your mark, Jagasta.
See this? What is this treachery? Who sent you?
Jagasta is placed 15 levels above the player. Due to his hand-to-hand skill, he has a decent chance at disarming you. Also worth noting, as pointed out by the UESP, he has a special ability which gives him 50% resistance to magicka, as well as 50% resistance to normal weapons. Depending on how you go about the fight, the Khajiit can prove to be a real problem. Recommended is to wait for him to sleep in the nighttime and start off the battle with some cheap shots. Have some health potions in hand and keep up the attacks. Once Jagasta is dead, it's time to move on to the next contract. However, there is one thing I'd like to show off before leaving the home. Climbing back up to the lower floor of the house, you'll see a keg tucked away in the corner of the room. Picking the very hard lock, you'll find a black hand hood, black hand robe, and the 5 tenets. This is of course very strange and peculiar. However, if you're still using the shrouded armor, I highly recommend a swap to the robe and hood. They fortify the exact same skills, only they offer a combined buff of 15 points, which goes a longer way than the shrouded set's 10. It's now time to head to the next dead drop. This one can be found in a rotten crate underneath Old Bridge, which is directly south of the Imperial City waterfront. Snagging your reward and the new set of orders, LeChance wants you to seek out an Argonian in Flooded Mine. Chalice is apparently responsible for killing a Dark Elven family near the Black Marsh Morrowind border, and justice must be upheld. She's a dangerous hunter and will more than likely put up a good fight. This contract is actually quite simple. Flooded Mine is a short walk north of Breville, and the only NPC inside of the dungeon is Chalice. There's unfortunately no dialogue shared between the two of you. As soon as she sees you, she turns hostile. She too has the ability of 50% resistance to magic and normal weapons. The Argonian fights with leveled blades and is placed 10 levels above the player. Similar to Jagasta, Chalice can prove to be a difficult fight. However, unlike the Khajiit, the guard station outside of Breville will come to your aid. If the battle proves to be really tricky, you can even the odds by having the Watchman get involved. Once Chalice is dead, it's on to the next dead drop. Fort Redmond is located north of Leyawiin, not far from Nocturnal Shrine and Water's Edge. In the coffin next to the entrance, you'll find your 5th set of orders, a schedule belonging to someone named Alval Uvani, as well as your payout. Your next mark is this Alval Uvani. He's a traveling merchant and is rarely in the same place for more than 2 days at a time. Due to his work schedule, his wife wants to separate from him, but apparently the only honorable way of doing so is by becoming a widow. Uvani is a master at casting destruction magic and won't go down without a fight. LeChance does point out his weakness though. Uvani is allergic to honey, and drinking mead would cause some form of paralysis. Alval's schedule has him in 4 different cities over the course of a week. If he's not at his home in Leyawiin, he'll always be at an inn in either Breville, Skingrad, or Bruma. It takes him some time to travel from city to city, so getting the jump on him in the wilderness might be your best bet, especially if you're looking to avoid a bounty. By placing a bottle of mead in front of him, he'll become paralyzed and make for a simple kill. Otherwise, Uvani is level 15, and surprise surprise, has resistance to magic and normal weapons, like the others before him. Once Alval has been defeated, it's time to yet again move on. Now, similar to Jagasta, there's one thing in the traveling merchant's home that's worth showing. By grabbing his keys, you can easily gain entrance to his manor. On the 2nd floor, in his personal quarters, you'll find a hidden wall safe that's secured by a very hard lock. Inside of that, you'll yet again find a black hand hood, robe, and copy of the 5 tenets. Another strange and peculiar encounter. The next dead drop is located in the Imperial City Market District. Behind Stonewall Shields is a hollowed out stump, which, by the way, makes for an amazing storage container. Grabbing your gold and assignment number 6, this one has you tracking down a Nord in the Jarrow Mountains. Halvestein Horblood killed the chieftain of a mead hall over on Solstheim. As a form of retaliation, the chieftain's sister put out a hit on the savage barbarian. Knoll Mountain is located east of Bruma, right beside Frostcrag Spire. Upon arrival, Horblood and his pet wolf, Redmaw, will become hostile. Halvestein is 20 levels above the player, has the same resistances as those prior to him, and fights using a leveled battle axe. Redmaw is only level 6, however, don't let that fool you. He can hit for 30 points of damage, which according to the UESP, makes him the strongest wolf in the game. If you're having trouble with the fight, recommended is to bring a follower. Shadowmere can hold her ground really nicely here. Another tactic is to use the mountain slopes to your advantage. Horblood will either stop on a cliff's edge, making him an easy target for ranged attacks, or he may even attempt to follow you down, which will end up dealing massive amounts of fall damage. Once he's defeated, it's time to move on to the final dead drop at the alien ruin of Nornal. The sunken chest is located near the entranceway, and in it includes your 7th assignment as well as your payout. The contract has you targeting the wood elf Ungolem in the city of Breville. Ungolem prays to the lucky old lady statue every night, pleading for the hand of a married woman. Said married woman's husband has learned of his desires and thus has contacted the Brotherhood. The wood elf, foreseeing trouble, bribed the guards to look the other way in case a fight breaks out. Between 5 PM to 1 AM, Ungolem could be found at the center of town, and as soon as he spots you, he turns hostile. The wood elf is 15 levels above the player, has the same resistances to magicka and normal weapons, and carries an enchanted level bow. The Bosmer is undoubtedly a tricky opponent. He counters magic and melee attacks, his aim is dead on, and depending on your character's build, the fight could be over in a matter of moments. If you're having issues, recommended is to forcefully pull the town watch into the fight. Line up behind a guard or a citizen, have Ungolem fire a loose arrow into them. This then takes the heat off of the player, and the Bosmer quickly becomes overwhelmed. Once he's been defeated, you run into a familiar face.
Bleed to death!
No! No! I'm too late. I thought I could get here in time. Thought I could stop you!
LeChance calls you out on your treachery and betrayal of the Brotherhood. He swears to kill you here and now in order to end your rampage. Seeing that you're confused as to what's going on, his demeanor changes as he then realizes what's been happening. He explains that the dead drops he's been leaving for you have gone untouched. The ones you've been picking up have actually had you targeting members of the Brotherhood. The real traitor has been manipulating you and making you do their dirty work. Everyone from Jagasa onwards has either been a silencer or a speaker. Ungolem himself was even the listener for the faction. The other Black Hand members believe that LeChance was the one giving you the orders and that he himself is the traitor. They're actively looking for him as you speak. In order to clear his name, he wants you to go to the next dead drop in Anvil and see if you can't locate the actual traitor. This all explains why several of your targets have had Black Hand paraphernalia on them, as well as why they've shared strange responses to their assassination. By the northern gate, behind the mermaid statue, lies a barrel. After waiting for some time, you'll see the Wood Elf apprentice, Enelroth, drop something inside of there. Confronting him, he swears that he was paid by some robed man to do it. He says that this mysterious person lives in the lighthouse cellar just outside of town. Running over and accosting Ulfgar Fogai for the key, you can now descend to the horrors of the cellar. Entering the hideout, the sounds of insects are deafening. According to the locals, the smells are foul, and littered all over the place are the body parts of humans and animals. There are fresh victims as well as older ones. On the other side of the cellar is a small room. Gaining access inside, the story continues to unfold. On a platter surrounded by candles is a severed head, simply called Mother's Head, and across from that is the traitor's diary. Giving it a read, it doesn't mark anyone specific as the traitor. However, it does absolve Lucien LeChance, as he seems to be the traitor's prime target. The story goes that there was a contract put out on the traitor's mother by their father. Lucien was the one to fulfill said hit, and the traitor witnessed it all as a young child. Ever since then, their goal was to infiltrate the Brotherhood, enact revenge on LeChance, and attempt to bring down the faction. Along the way, the traitor's psyche started to spiral. Their ramblings in this diary are all over the place. That severed head is actually the head of their dead mother, and they confess to murders that were outside of contracts, both of guilty and innocent people. Whoever the traitor is, they were once trained out of the Shadenhall Sanctuary, which makes sense as to why it had to be purified. They're currently a silencer in the faction, similar to yourself, and finding them shouldn't be that hard, as now there aren't many members of the Brotherhood left. Taking the diary, you hastily travel over to Applewatch, ready to clear LeChance's name.
Silencer, at last you've arrived. Fear not, for the crisis that has threatened the Dark Brotherhood has finally come to an end.
It's here you meet with the remaining 4 members of the Black Hand. Arkwin speaks with you directly and reveals that they've already dealt with LeChance. Hanging behind her is the mutilated, torn apart carcass that once belonged to your mentor. Unfortunately, there's no way to inform her that the traitor is still among them. It's during this time and partially out of necessity that she promotes you to the rank of Speaker. Arkwin was actually the target for the Anvil dead drop, so that pretty much absolves her from most suspicion. She explains that even though the faction is currently at its lowest, there's still a chance to turn things around. The plan is for the 5 of you to travel to the Night Mother's crypt and ask for her guidance. However, this is exactly what the traitor wants. Out of the other 3 members, Banis Alor, Belisarius Aureus, and Matthew Bellamont, it's not immediately obvious who the culprit is, although it is rather suspicious when this happens.
What? What is that? Is that a head?
Chatting with Arquin between 12 and 3 a.m., the 5 of you head over to the Lucky Old Lady statue in Breville. The other 4 members gather around, chant an incantation, and open up the entrance to the Night Mother's crypt. Here, the traitor is one step away from eradicating the Brotherhood for good. The 5 of you go on inside, and waiting for you in the grave is the apparition of the Night Mother herself.
Dearest Night Mother, most unholy maiden, please, we beg your mercy in this our time of need.
Arquin speaks with her and asks her to name another listener. This is so the guild can begin to rebuild. However, the Night Mother tells Arquin that the traitor is still among them. She calls out LeChance as being loyal until the very end, and as the 2 of them go back and forth, the real traitor finally reveals himself.
You will all suffer for the pain you have caused me. I will destroy your Night Mother, and the Dark Brotherhood will fall.
Matthew Bellamont unsheathes his dagger, cuts down Belisarius and Banis, then goes after the Night Mother. Arquin lunges in and begins to attack. This is where the player gets brought in, and it's 2 versus 1. Bellamont is 20 levels above the player and fights with a dagger of numbing. However, the UESP makes no mention of resistances to normal weapons and magic like his peers once had. Since Arquin is fighting with you and his blade isn't that impressive, this fight might go a lot smoother than some of the previous ones. If you're having difficulty, the best options are to focus on defense, while Arquin deals most of the damage. She's marked as essential, and the Night Mother can't actually die, so you really only need to worry about yourself here. Once Bellamont has been defeated, and the guild's been brought back from the brink of extinction, the Night Mother will speak with you. She recounts your journey through the faction thus far, commenting on your skills and how easily you rose through the ranks. She reveals that she knew Bellamont was the traitor all along. She let the events unfold so that way you could defeat him here and now. This helped to weed out the weak from the guild, including the previous listener, Ungolem. This is where she names you the new listener of the Dark Brotherhood, the highest rank one could possibly achieve in the faction. Before leaving, she urges you to loot everything from the crypt as it's impossible to come back here. Remember during the first quest, A Knife in the Dark, when LeChance gave you the Blade of Woe? If you had the blade on you while visiting the crypt, the Night Mother takes it and enhances it. In its best possible form, it demoralizes up to level 10 and damages willpower, health, and magicka all for 35 points. Once ready, she then sends you and Arquin back to the sanctuary. Upon arrival, Arquin speaks with you and informs you of your new duties. You can no longer embark on any of the contracts. In fact, your new role is a lot more dulled down. Once a week, you can go to the Lucky Old Lady statue and hear from the Night Mother. She'll tell you about a randomized contract, and from there, you return to Arquin, who will pay you the previous week's share of gold. That's about it for post-storyline content. Arquin works on recruiting new members, however, those fresh murderers are nothing more than disposable followers. One of them does supply you with the same spells that Mirage Dar once had, so there is some usefulness to them. With that, thus concludes the entire story of the Dark Brotherhood. I've already given my opinions and thoughts on this questline in my initial playthrough. The Dark Brotherhood is my favorite of the 5 main playable factions. The quests, stories, and mechanics are all unique, yet universal to every single playstyle. Assassin, Barbarian, Mage, Bard, your class and build doesn't matter. There are so many different approaches to each mission, and every time I play through the story, I feel like I learned something new. Like for example, I had no idea one of the new initiates sells the same spells that Mirage Dar once did. I've also really started to brainstorm and ponder on the contracts themselves. Questions like who wants each target dead and why. For example, during the quest Bad Medicine, the client wants Roderick's death to look like it was natural, and doesn't want any of the other mercenaries harmed. While exploring the dungeon, Allmug Gro Kromgog speaks with Nisha and explains his frustrations with Roderick's illness. He thinks it's for the better of the group if they were to simply just let Roderick pass away. He doesn't like watching him suffer and thinks the medicine is only postponing the inevitable. Nisha, of course, disagrees, and the conversation pretty much ends there. Of course, this doesn't confirm his involvement in the plan, but given no mercenaries are to be harmed, and Roderick's death needs to look natural, Kromgog is up there as suspect number 1 for me. Now, I also know that the faction isn't perfect. If you ask me, the Sanctuary contracts were fun, creative, and the promise of a bonus was really thrilling. However, most of the dead drop orders were stiff and sort of dull. A lot of them were as simple as go here, kill this person, travel to the next dead drop. There was very little dialogue, little to no challenge outside of combat, nor did they pique your sense of wonder. Of course, your contracts were fake and you were killing off your guildmates, so that makes up for a lot of it. But I feel as though they could have done more with Kaladane, Chalice, Havelstein, and Ungolem. I hope you enjoyed this shorter version of the Dark Brotherhood. If this video is received well enough, the plan is to do the same for the rest of the factions and storylines, including the major DLCs. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on adventuring.